What's cracking, y'all? You are now watching Boo TV. Appreciate you for stopping in. Like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell, stay notified, and let's get into the topic for today. So I found this video here by Rusty Buckets, a YouTuber that I follow, and I think he does a really good job with his channel, and I wish him the best. But the title of the video says, Larry Bird is an overrated shooter. I cannot tell you, without even listening to what he has to say, I cannot tell you how much I vehemently disagree with this. But I'm going to hold off on my comments for now. I'm going to listen to what Rusty Buckets has to say. And if today is the day where I have to go up against Rusty Buckets and his take, so be it. Let's get into it.
Again, Doggy, it's just math. It's attempts, it's makes, and it's percentage. And there's no way you could ever argue Larry Bird is a top three-point shooter of all time. You can't make that argument.
You're basing it on math and a time of when he played. I'm basing it on just shooting. Bird is an unbelievable.
Again, we had this discussion the other day. About James Naismith. James Naismith invented the game. You were rewarded for putting the ball in the basket. There's plenty of people that have shot more, made more, and guess what? Made more at a higher percentage than Larry Bird from three. I'm not saying Larry Bird is not one of the greatest shooters ever. He's not one of the greatest three-point shooters ever.
Absolutely.
You cannot make that argument.
Yes,
I'm sorry.
Because the 80s was so much different. His physicality, the way they guarded people, you couldn't. Can we get
Doggy, I've been trying to make a point.
Seriously,
I've been trying to make a point for you, Doggy.
Come on, man.
Larry Bird, for his career, took 1.9 threes per game, where he shot a respectable 38%. In the playoffs, his attempts go down, and his percentage drops to an abysmal 32%. Calling Larry Bird one of the greatest three-point shooters in NBA history is about as close to objectively untrue as something like that is capable of being, and it's one of the worst takes that you will consistently hear, especially from older.
So you're going to say that his 30% three-point shooting is not good in the playoffs, given that he basically only shot one a game? I don't think that's a fair assessment. Anyway, you know what? I'm not going to try to stop the video too much. I'm gonna just let him say what he got to say, and then I'll get my take.
NBA fans, let me explain why. Now, I'm sure those among you who actually hold this take that believe that Larry Bird is one of the greatest three-point shooters ever, I'm sure that you are screaming at the camera. Not the camera, I have a camera. You have a laptop or a phone or an iPad. Why are you watching this on an iPad, weirdo? That's a shot at my editor because he has an iPad. But I'm sure you're shouting, context, context, context. That's what happens any time you bring up the fact that Larry Bird didn't really take that many threes at all. Well, in Larry Bird's era, he wasn't allowed to shoot the ball from there. The three was a gimmick. I know, everybody knows that. You're not making a good point. You're not making a good counter argument. You're not bringing up something that hasn't been said before. This is not as strong of an argument as you seem to believe that it is. The statement Larry Bird would shoot more threes in today's era is likely true. In fact, I actually 100% agree with that. And I would even say that Larry in today's league probably launches like 8 threes a game, and I would guess he probably does it well. I do think Larry Bird is pretty damn good at shooting from mid-range, and it's only logical that that can extend to the three-point line in a modern context. I understand where you're coming from there when you say that, and I actually kind of agree even. However, that is a hypothetical at the end of the day. A hypothetical is a hypothetical. Whether or not it's a realistic hypothetical, it is still just a hypothetical. And we do not put players on all-time ranking lists based on hypotheticals. You just don't do that. Maybe Michael Jordan could have won 8 titles and scored 40,000 points in his career if he didn't retire. But he didn't do that. He did retire, so he didn't win those championships and he didn't score those points. So we do not rank Michael Jordan as if he did. Derrick Rose could have possibly...
No, but you rank him on what he performed in the time he played, in the amount of time he played.
been a top 10 point guard ever, but he got his prime taken away due to injury, so we don't know. Unfortunate, but we don't go around saying that Derrick Rose is a top 10 point guard ever just because maybe he could have been. Larry Bird might have shot way more threes in a modern context. He might have shot well doing so, but we don't know. The word might does not put you on an all-time list. It definitely shouldn't. Some people, they do for some damn reason. Might does not make up for having significantly worse playoff shooting numbers than Julius Randle. There are probably, and this is me being conservative, well over 50 players throughout NBA history who are far more capable of hitting a three-pointer than Larry Bird was in his time. Hell, ironically, JJ Redick, who's arguing against him, is one of them. But now this brings us to a different question. I think most reasonable people, especially younger NBA fans, I know I look 40, but I'm only 20, almost 23, not 20, almost 3. That's not how time works. For those among you who would hold that opinion, obviously he's not a great three-point shooter. Maybe he could have been, but maybe does not get you there. If that's the case, if Larry Bird's not a great three-point shooter, in fact, probably a pretty mediocre one, 32% from three for your career is pretty bad. The amount of players that have shot better from three in their career on more attempts from the playoffs, that list is astronomical. So that said, is he even an all-time great shooter? Because can you be an all-time great shooter if your three ball is not good? Can you coast there just purely on mid-range shooting alone? Because when we say all-time great shooter, I do think that should include mid-range shooting. If we're going to be more specific about three-point shooting, then Larry Bird's not in that conversation. But if we're just talking shooting in general, I think a lot more people would be open to putting Bird there, including myself. But should we? So I was curious about this. Can you be a great mid-range shooter and not a great three-point shooter and still be an all-time great overall shooter? It's definitely an interesting question, and that led me to putting out a poll on Twitter. DeMar DeRozan, is he an all-time great shooter? Factoring in the mid-range game, DeMar has historically been one of the better mid-range shooters in the league for over a decade, and as of recently, his percentage has gotten so good that he's put up some all-time mid-range seasons, but he cannot hit a three to save his life. Well, here's the results of the poll. A pretty resounding no, with the people who didn't go with a hard no still pretty unsure. So I figured, okay, DeMar DeRozan, not an all-time great shooter, but Larry Bird is a better three-point shooter. I don't know why I'm doing numbers and letters. This is the most ADHD video I've ever recorded. And B, Larry Bird's a better shooter from mid-range and from three. So maybe this isn't the most fair comparison. So I'm going to up the ante to another all-time great. In fact, a player who is even higher than Larry Bird all time. What about Michael Jordan? I think Michael Jordan is a top 3 mid-range shooter ever. Me personally, I pretty much have it as a three-way tie between him, Kevin Durant, and Dirk Nowitzki. And, well, Michael Jordan also can't shoot from three very well. He's had some years, but usually either the three-point line was shortened or the volume was just super low, so not a good three-point shooter. But still, he is an all-time great, and he's a better mid-range shooter than DeMar DeRozan is by a significant mile. I'd say he's in a much better three-point shooter even. By the way, Michael Jordan, better career numbers from three in the playoffs than Larry Bird has, just putting that out there. So if Bird, who is a worse three-point shooter than MJ in the playoffs, as I mentioned, and is just overall not that amazing from...
Michael Jordan would tell you himself that he wasn't a better three-point shooter than Larry Bird. Mike would say that himself.
Outside the perimeter, but is great from mid-range, but worse than MJ in that area. How is Bird ranked so much higher than Michael Jordan as a shooter, like universally? Looking at their overall shooting package, I might take Michael Jordan overall just because he's a better mid-range shooter, and sure, Bird is more likely to hit a spot-up three-pointer, but if neither of them are even going to take that many, then what freaking difference does that make? So it really just comes...
The guy who thinks that I know I said I was going to interrupt too many more times. I'm going to make this short. This guy who thinks Michael Jordan's the greatest player of all time, I could say, okay, sure, Michael Jordan's a better mid-range shooter, but I would dare not say Michael Jordan was a better all-around shooter than Larry Bird. Michael Jordan is a better mid-range shooter than Larry Bird. It's not by a whole lot, but when you talk about three-point shooting, there's really no comparison between him and Jordan. There's not. So from shooting all around, when you take into consideration three-point shooting and mid-range, Michael Jordan is not a better shooter than Larry Bird. No.
Down to who's better from mid-range, and at that point, I'm going Michael Jordan. So, if you can be considered an all-time great shooter without threes, then why is Michael Jordan consistently ranked lower than Larry Bird on any all-time shooting list that you're ever going to find? It really just seems like perception and narrative and the idea that Larry Bird is that good, but it's not really a fact by any means. It's just a vibe. Larry Bird's identity as a shooter is entirely just a vibe. Here is a ranking from CBS Sports of the greatest shooters of all time. I'm going to warn you, this list sucks overall, but this is just to prove a point. This is their top 15 shooters of all time. Larry Bird is ranked number 4, which is pretty disgusting given that every single player on this list has a higher volume or percentage from 3. In fact, everyone but Steve Kerr has both. And even Steve Kerr shoots damn near like 8% better than Bird on 0.1 less attempts. So he's a better shooter too. Larry Bird is without a shadow of the doubt the worst three-point shooter listed here by quite a distance. And he's the 4th best shooter of all time. So you can only assume that's based purely on his mid-range ability. And if that's the case, why is Dirk lower than Larry Bird? Because better from mid-range and much better from 3. Why is Michael Jordan lower? Because better from mid-range, both of them really don't shoot that many threes and don't shoot them all that amazing. So I don't really think that's really that fair. We're really just going off of vibes here. So is Larry Bird even an all-time great shooter? I would let you have that one. I think ranking him 4th or anything near that high is ridiculous and straight up disrespectful to other players shooting the ball. I understand that Bird was one of the early guys to like really make the jump shot like a huge part of his game, and he did it primarily from mid-range. I give respect to the origin of it and the early stages of basketball, but we're not going to take that respect or the possibility that he could have been a great three-point shooter and just pretend that he was. It's not how shit works, and it drives me crazy. You are literally ignoring made three-pointers in favor of threes you think could have been made under another context. You're ranking hypothetical threes over actual freaking three-pointers. Do you know how stupid and insulting that is to the players who've actually hit the damn shots, actually made the threes in the NBA? The players who over 2 seasons, granted only a few of them have done it, maybe 3 seasons, have hit more threes than Larry Bird did in his entire career. It is insulting to them. Stop saying it. If you want to say he's an all-time great shooter, fine. But he moves a couple of spots down that list for not being able to hit the 3 as far as I'm concerned. And for me personally, I don't think he is. I don't think you can get in on just mid-range shooting because I also don't think Michael Jordan is an all-time great shooter. If you can't do both, you're not on the list as far as I'm concerned, but I'll leave that to be more of a gray area. But the three-point shooting thing, that is black and white. Stop presenting it as though it isn't.
So he was definitely responding to that segment on ESPN First Take between Mad Dog, Chris Mad Dog Russo, Doggy, and JJ Redick, which when that happened, I had actually reacted directly to that video months ago on my channel. If you want to check that out, I'll put a link to that video in the description of this one. Go check it out. But I'm going to address Rusty Buckets and his take on Larry Bird right here, right now. And obviously that factors in with this Mad Dog and JJ Redick argument. All right. Now, I've been watching Rusty Buckets for probably over a year now, and I do like his content, and I'm a fan of his content. I think he does a good job, but that doesn't mean that I agree with him on everything he says, but I still support him. He's great. But based off me watching him and some of his takes, I do realize in a lot of the areas that I disagree with him with, I feel like he doesn't apply context, and I don't think he really understands some of the players that he talks about. And I'm not saying he doesn't know basketball, but that's just what I gather sometimes. Now let me get into his take. and give my take and my rebuttal and my defense of Larry Bird, who I believe is one of the greatest shooters of all time, and I believe is the greatest shooter of his generation. Let me make this very, very, very clear. You cannot make a comparison from players in different eras and not take into consideration the eras from which that player played in, thus making these discussions hypothetical. Everyone should do their best. I do my best to try to understand these players' games, their style of play, their accomplishments, their stats inside their era, and take all that into consideration when I try to apply them to different eras and give my analysis. For some players, it's easier to do than others. Trying to stick to hard surface level analytics in what can be considered two different games of basketball and resting your hat on that is not the best argument, in my opinion. I also believe Rusty Buckets is being very contradictory of himself and to other takes that I've heard him make on his very own channel. For example, in a different Larry Bird take, I heard him say that Larry Bird would be a better version of himself in today's era of basketball. Now that's him using context and being hypothetical. And by him saying that you are acknowledging Bird, well, by him saying that, he's acknowledging that Bird played in a stiffer and more difficult era of basketball. And also, he's stating that the current players have it easier and would be lesser versions of themselves in eras of the past. That is what he's saying when he says that. And I actually agree with that. Larry Bird was the founding father of the 50-40-90 club. And he did it more than once. Larry Bird did not grow up with the three-point line. The shot wasn't really practiced, or wasn't practiced at all, and was not a part of the game at all. There was no reason for players to launch that far when it was only getting you 2 points with a lower probability. Larry Bird, like the rest of the players in the league, had to evolve and adapt and learn how to shoot on the fly when the three-point line was implemented. Bird was by far and away the best at it in his era. Nobody could compare to Bird at three-point shooting in his era of basketball. His first year, he miraculously, I don't even know how he did it. His first year, he shot 40% from three. I don't even understand it, how he did that. Then, the 4 years following that, he was sitting somewhere in the 20th percentile from three-point land. But once Larry Bird fully discovered the range, understood the range, and his touch for the range, he shot over 40% from three-point land for 4 consecutive years. 4. And the only reason his percentages dipped back into the 30s after that was because of his double Achilles injury, the surgery that he got, and his back problems that are well documented. But Larry never used that as an excuse. It was never in his DNA. Rest assured, Larry Bird was well onto his way to 5+ consecutive seasons of torching the league for over 40% from three-point land, with no one else being close to his level of three-point prowess. rusty. You cannot decidedly leave that fact out. Sir, that's how you properly analyze. Apply that context and truthful narrative to the statistics. There's a story behind everything. I've said that countless of times on this channel. Let's put these things into their perspective. Hell, had it not been for the first handful of seasons of acclimating to the 3-ball, to that range, Bird is he's definitely would be comfortably an over 40% three-point shooter on his career. In an era where you were not getting many attempts. So, with that being said, you had to dial in and hit on your first 2 or 3 shots because that was all you was getting. That was all you were getting for the entire game. There was no such thing as missing your first few threes and then finding your shot and finding your rhythm and catching fire and launching 8 for 11 from 3-point shots a game, boosting your totals and averages. That wasn't a thing back then. But that's something that the players have now. Many nights in the 1980s, after your first or second shot, like I said, the game's over, baby. You are logging, if you miss both of your shots, you are logging 0% against your attempts and against your average. That's it. How many times in today's NBA do we see players start off cold from 3-point land, ice cold? Then by the end of the game, they're like 5 for 11 or 7 for 16. That's including Stephen Wardell Curry, including Steph Curry, who even I believe is the greatest 3-point shooter to ever play the game of basketball. It is beyond incredible that Larry was able to shoot in the 40 percentiles, given the fact that he wasn't given the cushion of missed shot attempts and the red carpet of rhythmic opportunity. Excuse me. Still got a little congestion. Imagine this. Check this example out. Think about it. It's not the most direct example, but listen to me here. Imagine this. Imagine playing at one of those fairgrounds basketball games. You know, at the fairs, whatever, they have the booth set up, win a prize, right? One of those fairground basketball games to win a prize. And going into that game, you know, like everybody else knows, y'all know it's unfair because you know, for those games, you're usually getting 1 to 3 shot attempts to get that prize. You got to hit that bucket. On top of that, the rim is obviously rigged. The hoop is rigged. We know that. So you go into that game feeling like the chips are already stacked against you. Not a direct analogy, but you see the point I'm trying to make here. It's very similar. And the rigged hoop would be the adjustment factor of the 3-point line with limited attempts. You get where I'm going here, folks? The fact that Larry Joe Bird is still damn near 40% on his career with the lack of attempts and emphasis on the 3-point shot is nothing short of remarkable. You cannot leave these facts out. You cannot leave this context out. It's absurd. Even when you consider those 20% years where he was around league average at the time, on his career, he shot around 37% when the league average in the 80s was in the mid to high 20s. Still far and above his contemporaries. Even when you bring up and consider his playoff 3-point shooting percentage in the lower 30s, he was still well above league average. in a league, in a game that did not emphasize the three-point line and the attempts and the spacing wasn't available like it is today. I haven't even gotten into the fact that Larry Bird won 3 consecutive three-point shooting contests, including the first ever three-point shooting contest. At the end of the day, he was an outlier at three-point shooting during his era. You can't even debate that. I haven't even touched on like Larry Bird three-point shooting in the clutch. Like when it matters the most, when the chips are on the line. When most players are palms are sweaty, knees weak, arms is heavy, there's vomit on the sweater already, mom's spaghetti. Them moments where most people tighten the butt cheeks, cramping up. Bird to give you the three-point bucket, baby. Better believe it. Don't even talk to me. I don't even want to hear it. Don't even talk to me about many of the players of this era. Don't. Like I said before, and like I've said plenty of times on this channel, this league caters to three-point shooting, emphasizes it, lack of defense, all the spacing in the world, all the time in the world. It's all teams do these days. Regardless to if you're a marksman, three-point shooter or not, it doesn't even matter. All they do is run to the three-point line and shoot. Hell, James Harden is already sitting comfortably as the 3rd best three-point shooter in terms of three-point shots made. Statistically. We all know damn well James Harden ain't no all-time great three-point shooter. We all know that. But there you are. There it is. Surface level analytics. Anybody that doesn't understand the game of basketball, look at this sheet of paper. Oh, James Harden's is number 3. Behind Steph Curry and Ray Allen. He's one of the best three-point shooters to ever play the game. What? Surface level analytics. Surface level analysis. In the future, and we already see it happening right now, there are going to be countless of players rewriting the three-point record books just on the mere fact that they are shooting an absurd amount of shots, and inferior three-point shooters will pass out players like Bird, Reggie Miller, Ray Allen, so on and so forth. But if you gave those guys like Reggie, Ray Allen, Bird, if you gave those guys the green light and placed them in today's NBA, in today's era, I would love to see what they do. I already know what they're going to do. We saw what they did in their non-three-point shooting eras, and they were prolific. It's like giving them steroids if you put them in today's NBA. And the title of this video had the nerves to use the word overrated. Larry Bird and overrated. In fact, Larry Bird is underrated in my opinion. How dare you use the word Larry Bird and overrated in the same sentence? Based on what? Based on what? Surface level analysis? Analytics? Miss me with that. Please miss me with that BS. Hell, in the next 30, 40, 50 years, whatever, there probably won't be too many players that played from like before the year 2010 that will still be atop the three-point records based on volume and opportunity alone. Miss me with that. And he had the nerves to bring up JJ Redick and say, well, and speaking of JJ Redick, basically saying he's a better three-point shooter than Bird. Miss me with that BS, please. JJ Redick, a three-point shooter who is basically a role player for his entire career. You are comparing JJ Redick's three-point prowess to Larry Bird's. JJ Redick, a guy who just runs around and waits for somebody to pass him the ball for an open three-point shot. JJ Redick, a role player where he's basically nobody's really paying attention to him like that. And he is a beneficiary of playing with players better than him, or all-stars or superstars that can create their own shot attempts, and by their scoring abilities and their greatness, they are able to create opportunities for players like JJ Redick by giving them easy buckets because all the attention is on them and not the three-point shooters around them. You're comparing JJ Redick to Larry Bird? Larry Bird was the all-star. Larry Bird was the guy when he had the ball. All eyes were on him. Defenses were dialed in specifically on Larry Bird, trying to stop Larry Bird. So all three-point shots aren't created equal, sir. Larry Bird had to get his off isolation sometimes. Larry Bird was creating his own three-point shot at times, including catch and shoot opportunities. But Larry Bird could pull up and get you buckets with the ball in his hand with 1 to 2 defenders on him, and the rest of the defenders backed up waiting for Larry Bird, all eyes on him. There is no comparison to Larry Bird as a three-point shooter who did it in many different ways with defensive schemes directly created to stop him, as opposed to someone like JJ Redick, who got no attention, especially comparatively, and was a product of people setting him up for easy buckets. Please. There is no comparison. And this is why I have a problem with surface level analysis and analytics and people saying, just look at the numbers. Just look at the numbers, doggy. Look at the numbers. It's all analytics. It's all numbers. No, it's not. I guarantee you, if you take JJ Redick just how he is and put him on a team and say, hey, here's the ball in your hand, you create now. You're the only all-star on the team, basically. Or you're the best player on the team. Now you have to create your own three-point shot. Nobody else is making it easy for you by sucking in defenses and kicking it out to you. Let's see what that three-point shot looks like now, JJ Redick. And anybody else that's a goddamn role player that you try to compare to Larry Bird. Get out of my face with that. Please. Of course JJ Redick would make that argument because it helps boost himself up. It helps validate his stature as a three-point shooter. Of course JJ Redick would say that. Get the hell out of my face. Anyway, folks, that's all I got to say about it. Like I said, you want to hear me talk more about that video of Redick and Doggy, look in the description of this video. But I probably made the same points that I made in this video. In fact, I probably made more points in this video. But if you want to go check out my raw reaction to when that segment first leaked out on the internet, on the airways, go check it out. Y'all let me know what you think about it. Do you agree with me or do you agree with Rusty? Please, let me know what you think about it. Am I out of pocket or am I on par here? Am I hitting a hole in one? Am I in the greens or am I in the rough? Am I in the water? Let me know. Share this video, man. Go share this video, man. Share this video with your friends, whether they're pro Larry Bird, whether they're against Larry Bird, I don't know. But share this video with your friends and the people that you're debating against and tell them, listen to what this guy got to say. Listen to what Boo got to say. Take this into consideration. It's bringing up some good points here. Like, comment, subscribe. Check out our Larry Bird playlist. And I'll catch you on the next one. We out, baby.